It's Sunday, June 1st. The St. Louis Cardinals finished May with a 19-8 record. That is the best record in baseball during that month. And they followed it up by starting June with a clunker, an 8-1 loss to the Rangers. They dropped the series in Arlington. I'm Katie Woo. That's Bernie Miklasz. Welcome back to Cardinal Territory. I'm coming to you live from Dallas Love Field. Bernie's coming to you live from St. Louis. Bernie, how was your weekend?
My weekend was fine. I feel bad for you, scrambling around, man. You're bringing back bad memories. You're sitting at Dallas Fort Worth airport, and you're about ready to go into that little. You could point to it if I could get. There's something cantina over your, as I
I'll be
see you,
going
your
there.
left shoulder. Yeah, I think a margarita's in your future.
Perhaps a double. Who's to say?
I don't blame you, but no, everything's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, look, it wasn't a great series for the Cardinals in Texas. I thought it was a fine road trip going 3-3 in the interleague series. We obviously
Right.
wanted to come out of Sunday with the win heading into an off day. But it was just, a flat series. And hey, they'd won 8 of their last 10 series coming into this one. For whatever reason, they never really seemed to play well in Arlington. Call it the curse of the 2011 World Series. But I'm very confident this Cardinals club can flush it and move towards June and what will be an imperative month for them. Some minor transactions first, though, as we know, on Saturday, Jordan Walker went on the 10-day IL with some left wrist inflammation. Bernie, the good news here is I'm talking to manager Ollie Marmol. It doesn't sound like this is anything serious. This is retroactive to May 29th. So he would be eligible, I believe, to come back off the injured list on June 8th if all is feeling well. It was just a matter of not being able to use him for a couple of days and the Cardinals needing that roster flexibility. So Ryan Blade is up. He'll get in some at bats against lefties and just kind of here for a depth piece. The Cardinals don't expect Jordan Walker to need a rehab assignment when he does return. So it looks like and sounds like this won't be super long. We'll keep our fingers crossed for that because over the last 10 days or so, Jordan Walker had showed some pretty encouraging signs of turning it around.
Oh, no doubt about it. Like I think it went back 13 games, maybe. I was doing some numbers, and well, first of all, just his RBI production and his power and his batting average with runners in scoring position was insanely good. And he had all of these hits that were left the bat at 100 miles per hour plus, and his bat speed's out of this world. So he's still striking out too much. But the point is, you're looking for any signs of progress, and he showed. We all recognize that the plate discipline is still an issue, so I'm not papering over that. But you wanted to see something, a little oomph, and he showed a lot of that basically over the last 2 weeks before he got hurt. So that was to me, that was one of the real positive things in May. And after all, they had a lot of positives in May because they had the best record in the majors in May. What was it, 19-8? So,
19-8.
so I'm looking at this series real quick on this. Listen, the Cardinals since April 3rd, going into today, since April 30th, had the best record in the major leagues, and in the month of May they had the best record in the major leagues. And we also knew when they were going into Texas, we also knew they were going to run into a great, great, great set of starting pitchers. Even Patrick Corbin's been pitching great this year. They have the best rotation ERA wise in the majors. So we knew they were probably going to have to scratch for runs. Did I think they would score more than 4 in 3 games? Yeah, but I didn't think
Yeah.
they were going to have a barrage of offense. And it was just one of those series. But you nailed it. 3-3 on the road trip. I think that's always a reasonable expectation, for a team. So now they come home and they're going to have to face more really good pitching with the Kansas City Royals, who they're not easy to beat either because they pitch so well.
No, I mean, you think about what that series was like at Kauffman Stadium in May. That was one of their best series they've played all season. Very tight ball club, very well pitched, like you mentioned. And, I do want to go back to that Rangers starting pitching. I mean, they were really good. Jack Leiter's legit. We all know about Jacob deGrom, and Patrick Corbin is having a turnaround year. So it's great to see for Patrick Corbin, who's really struggled over the last couple of years. And I know we're going to get into the Cardinals offense later in the show, Bernie. I know you have some numbers you want to point out, but was I surprised from this performance? A little bit, especially today, just because I thought the 7th and the 8th inning was a little sloppy compared to the Cardinals defense and situational awareness that we've seen. But when you think about how May went down, what this team did, the style of games they played, again, like we said, they won 8 of their last 10 series. They were due for a series that just kind of felt pretty whatever. And that's how I felt this weekend went. We'll get a much better test to what the Cardinals look like in this upcoming 9-game homestand, 3 against the Royals, 3 against the Dodgers. So that'll be a big one, and 3 against Toronto. So these are all 3 very legit clubs.
Right.
I'm under the impression that I think we can grant the Cardinals the affordability to flush the series against Texas, but I'm interested to see how they respond, especially knowing just what their schedule looks like in June. I think they have 2 off days in the entire month, so we'll see.
Yeah, and I was disappointed because, first of all, we've seen them beat some really, really outstanding starting pitchers. So I thought that they had a fighting chance to win 2 out of 3 there, even though they were going up against a couple guys who are really red hot right now. But maybe the thing that disappointed me was, Katie, was that, they didn't have, but Friday's game was out of reach. Don't get me wrong. They had a chance to do some damage against the Rangers bullpen on Sunday, and they didn't do it. So it wasn't just the starting pitchers. They didn't do anything against their relievers either. So, yeah, they hit 161 for the series, and they had more strikeouts and base hits. So that's not good. You're not going to do too well. Actually, and I'm going to sound like a homer, and I'm not. Actually, given how poorly they hit, and to your point, the defense was not to the usual standard. They actually did well to get 1 game there. I mean, they really did. If you think about it, right?
10 strikeouts from Sonny Gray is what it took.
Right. So I'm not overreacting to it, but I do have. We'll talk about this, in this video. But I do have some concerns about the offense going forward, and we can get into that whenever you want to get into that.
Well, let's segue to it right now. First, a quick message from Arena Club, and then we'll get Bernie's takes on the offense. I, for one, am very interested about that.
FT fan by now, if you're buying, selling, trading, collecting cards, Arena Club is the spot. We've been talking about them all season long, but I do want to focus on the slab pack experience, Kratz, since you've been ripping some slab packs digitally, and what happens?
I mean, as a kid, you wanted to rip open the packs. How can they do this digitally? Oh, baby. This is exciting, how the graphics come out and everything. And, oh, yeah, the card that you pull, you can actually get that, John, physically. So it's perfect. It's all in one place, and it's a super exciting experience.
Yeah, they send that to you from the vault if you want it. But if you look at it and you're like, it's not the card for me, I want to sell back, go for it. You can do any of that on Arena Club, and you can acquire the best value for your money with those slab packs, transparent checklists, and Arena Club's Slab Safe program. Right now, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/FAL and use code FAL. arenaclub.com/FAL. Use code FAL.
Again, that was from our friends at Arena Club. All right, Bernie, as we know on this show, there is nothing you do better, and you do a lot of things well, than numbers and stats. And I want to take a deeper dive into the St. Louis Cardinals offense, which remains, I think, one of the better offenses in the National League. But as I'm sure you're about to point out, there are some reasons for concern. What do you got?
They've had too many low-scoring games, and again, it's okay, but you can't expect your pitchers to hold the other side to 1 or 2 runs every time either. They have those big blowouts where they score 11 or whatever. But let me go over this. So their last 14 games, the Cardinals are 8-6, and they've averaged 3.5 runs per game. Their batting average after today will probably be in the 230s. Their on base percentage is under 300, and their slugging is just pretty much shot. They're even slowing down in terms of hitting doubles. They've only hit 9 home runs during the last 14 games, and the doubles have dipped too. But what concerns me about it is if you look at during this stretch, they've scored 1 run or no runs, including today, in 6 of the 14 games. Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's nearly half the games. I mean, that's and to no one's surprise whatsoever. Their record when they score 1 run in those games, I think they didn't get away with any. They're like 0-6 in those games. So yeah, I mean, I could understand where you have some days where you score 3 runs, and I have some days where you just score 2. But when you're nearly like half of your games, the last 14, you're scoring only 1 run or nothing. That's got to change. That really has to change. And the last 14 games, because of the offense slowing down, the pitchers have had still. I still think they've done well. They're actually like their run differential, because their offense has been so bad. is like a -8 over the last 14 games. So my point is that they're kind of trending in the wrong direction. Now, I'm also I have perspective, and I also know that some of this downturn was inevitable, just like the team's overall record is going to have a downturn, because you don't play 700 baseball for like 3 months in a row. I mean,
Right.
There's going to be some leveling off, but I think the offense is the thing that's kind of got my attention now. I won't go into numbers, but just trust me on this. Like Victor Scott's production in May was way down, and nothing good happened today. Nolan Arenado, he's had some fine moments, but in the month of May, he had 221. We had a 269 on base percentage, and then very little power. And then you just add today to that, and then they're not getting much offense out of the catcher position. And even Ivan Herrera, my guy, he's slowed down. He's got one extra base hit in his last 14 games. And so he's in a downturn. So the good news is they have a lot of guys that are hitting above average since the beginning of May, even with all of these one-run games in there. But they're going to have to turn that around. They're just going to have to be more competitive they're going to have to be more competitive in more games than they've been lately offensively.
So I think I'm really glad you brought this up, because I think this is part of the bigger picture for the Cardinals this year. This is, as we know, a transition season. And a lot of these guys especially these younger guys, are getting a full run at playing time consistently for the first time, which means the league is, for the first time, having an ability to see them consistently and adjust themselves. So I'm really glad you brought up Victor Scott II, because this is what I think we're seeing. Victor Scott came up. He had some things figured out in April offensively. We know the glove's not going anywhere, but from a bat standpoint, then May, things took a turn because the league was adjusting to him. Now it's Victor's turn to adjust back to the league. We saw this with Alec Burleson, who in The Athletic last week said, we know how Alec Burleson's April went. It was not good. He was hitting the ball much better against righties in May. And that's because he's had an ability to adjust back to the league. He talked about this. He said, my contact rate and my ability to put the ball on the bat is like my superpower. That's what hitting coach Brant Brown calls it. He goes, but what good does it do to swing at pitches I can't do damage with? And pitchers knew that I would swing at pitches I couldn't do damage with. So I had to adjust to their game strategy. Now I'm only looking at damaged pitches only. So for players like Victor Scott, for players like Ivan Herrera, for players even like Mason Wynn still, there are going to be these times, these hills and peaks and valleys, where the league is adjusting to them and they have to learn to adjust back. So
Totally.
I think this ties in perfectly to what you're seeing with the offense, because these guys were swinging the bat really well. They were figuring out ways to get on base, doing things differently. And now the league has figured out what their game plan is. And it's this constant back and forth of adjustments. That's one of the underlying causes of this transition season. And I think we're seeing that represented in the bats right now.
Right. And so I think the way I would put it is that we have to, just like the Cardinals hitters have to adjust, I think those of us who follow the team, whether it be fans or media, I think we have to adjust too. And what that means is simply, this team has been a delightful surprise. I went back because I was curious. I wanted to see some of the preseason rankings. And the first one I found was fine because it was indicative of what a lot of national outlets were saying. But the Cardinals were in the preseason power ratings at ESPN were 25th. And they entered today with the 8th best winning percentage in the majors. So listen, that's wonderful, but it was always going to be a question about sustainability. And, when you look at where they've been, and let me just look at my notes here real quick, and I apologize. Since April 30th, they've been playing 724 baseball going into today. The Dodgers don't sustain that. No one sustains it, right? No one sustains that. So I would hope, fans can do whatever they want or feel however they want, but let's not go. I've pointed out some of the problems with the offense, okay, which I think is the fair and the right thing to do, just to express some concern. But I just hope people don't start to freak out and, just start hammering everybody again, like as if we're going back to the off season and everyone must go and all this. And I'm exaggerating for effect, but I think we got to maintain a little perspective here. They weren't going to play 724 ball, for a long period of time. They did it for over a month. but nor were they as bad as they looked when they got off to a 10-15 start either, right? So
Yep.
the answer is
Yep.
somewhere in the middle. So let's just make sure we keep some perspective on this. That would be my message. Not that anyone asked me for my message, but that's what it would be.
Well, I disagree. We have, thankfully, many subscribers who come on to hear your messaging. So I think I think you're right, though. Let's say June goes, look, let me just pull up the stat for you guys.
Sure.
The Cardinals have 28 games in their next 29 days. They have 2 scheduled off days in the entire month of June, one being tomorrow. So after June 2nd, there is 1 off day that entire month. If June goes halfway between April, which they were 11-16 in April, I'm not counting March in that, and May, which, as we said, 19-8. If the Cardinals are right in there in June, given their schedule, given the fact that they are going to have to work in off days for a lot of their starters, there's not going to be that rotating off day that we had every Thursday in May. Do you take that? Given where the Cardinals are and the cushion that they've given themselves in May with their superb play, if the Cardinals are somewhere in the middle of April and May in June, I'm okay with that because that still sets them up really well to go into July. And that's a whole different conversation about July and the trade deadline in the future. And we're not going to get into that on this episode. But I'm okay with that. I still think that's an interesting season and a good place to be for this club.
Right. And, and as much concern as I have over the offense, the pitching, there's always some concern. And you just pointed out it's a heavy duty schedule in June. So these guys will be challenged like they really haven't been challenged so far this season with no breaks, barring
0
rainouts or something. Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of stress put on the starters. They're going to be working on like kind of normal rest and rather having that extra day. And it'll put more stress, I think, on the bullpen. And I think it's not going to put stress on Ollie Marmol or Dusty Blake, but they're also going to have to be very quick on their feet in figuring out, like, on the fly, okay, we've got to change these 2 relievers out and get someone else up here. There's by the way, I'd be okay if they don't use Rodri Munoz. I'd be okay with that.
That was not great.
But no, so but if you go back to when they retooled this bullpen on the fly, it was on that off day after that series in Atlanta. They have the second best bullpen ERA in the majors, and nothing that went on in this series other than the garbage innings really affected that. They're key guys. I do have a little concern about Kyle Leahy. He's not striking people out. His strikeout rate was nearly 30% up until, I'm estimating this, the last 2.5 weeks, and the strikeout rate's really low. And I think we're seeing some vulnerability there. The bullpen as a whole, I really like it, but I'm just saying, I think we also have to recalibrate perhaps what we should expect from Kyle Leahy. I don't think he can be Superman the way he has been. And I don't know whether the workload was too much, but that's another thing I keep an eye on. But yeah, the good news is that overall, though, their pitching is in good shape. It really is. But there is a bigger test in the month of June. So let's see what they do. But there's still a lot of things to like. Their defense is outstanding. Again, they're in a little bit of a sloppy rut here. First of all, they were playing in bad weather in Baltimore for 2 of those 3 days, and I can understand that.
Miserable. Oh my gosh.
And right, and then the Texas thing, I don't know what to say. Look, they're better than that, but they're going to rise back to their level. They didn't all of a sudden, just because they've had a little slip defensively, it doesn't mean all of a sudden their great defense all year was just some kind of mirage or something. They're a very good defensive team.
Yeah, like I said, I think this was just in the course of a 162 game season. Every now and then you're going to have a series in which you just don't play well. And I just didn't think the Cardinals played that well this weekend. I don't think they're regressing to the mean by any means. I think their body of work over 1/3 of the season already, which is crazy that we are 1/3 of the way through the season, says much more about their defense and pitching than this 3-game interleague series in Texas. But you make a really good point about the bullpen, Bernie. And this is something that I want to talk about with you, because when we go back to Busch Stadium on June 3rd, let me count. We'll get 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 13 games before an off day. And what we've known about this Cardinal starting rotation is being on a 6-day rest schedule and utilizing the hybrid role of Steven Matz really helped them in April. In May, they didn't need to do that because of the off day. Remember, they had an off day in almost every single Thursday of the month of May. June, they won't have that. So what the Cardinals are trying to balance right now is how do we keep our pitchers healthy and keep them on track and work in a rest day? And given how Steven Matz has done in the bullpen for them, has been huge and part of their bullpen success that we've talked about. Is it best for the club to take him out of that spot? I'm leaning no. I'm leaning no. I don't know what you do with that bullpen if you take Steven Matz out to be a spot starter, because all of a sudden he's not usable for 2 or 3 days as he goes in to take that spot start. And then you have to backfill a bullpen that's already kind of regressing a little bit. You know, I think Gordon Graceffa will be fine. We'll see him again. But they don't really have someone, while Jojo Romero and John Sweeney have looked better, they don't have someone from the left side that can go and do what Matz did. So what do you do here? I don't think they should take him out of that role. My speculation, I wonder if this is a good time to see Michael McGreevy take another spot start.
You nailed it. I mean, 100%. I don't need to repeat what you just said because you're right on it. That's how I was thinking too. I would keep Matz in the bullpen. Yeah, we do. I would keep Matz in the bullpen. And I know, was it today? Yeah, today he got hit. It was whatever. You know, he's good, and he's done a pretty effective job against right-handed hitters, and he's a veteran. He's poised. You don't have to worry about him, freaking out there. So let me put it this way, just to echo what you said and add something. If this isn't a month to put Michael McGreevy in your rotation, then I really don't know what scenario would qualify as, oh, this is the time we should put him in the rotation. This is clearly the opportune time to do that, right? And then that way you don't weaken your bullpen, as you pointed out. So, they have some decisions to make. Listen, I think the dugout's been really, really, really smart this year. I'm assuming they're going to come up with the right plan. If they don't, I guess I'm going to have to go back to ripping Ollie a little bit, if they don't bring McGreevy up, because no, really, I just feel that to me, it's just such an obvious move.
I think so too. Again, it goes back to just how effective Matz has been in relief. It goes back to how imperative that bullpen has been. I mean, you have Phil Maton looking better, Ryan Helsley, and he had 9 for 9 in save opportunities this May. And what Matz has been able to do in the back end has been instrumental to the team's overall success. And I'll pull up the schedule again because I don't know it off my head, but the Cardinals don't necessarily need to. They can go through the Royals series. So you're going to have Palante on Tuesday, Miles on Wednesday, Libby on Thursday. I think after that Royals series is when Ollie Marmol and Dusty Blake make a decision about when do we incorporate a spot starter, or if we do. I'm under the belief that they will, because you have Sonny Gray starting against the Dodgers on that Friday, so the rotation turns over. You can match up the rotation with Michael McGreevy's availability, and you can plan it out and start planning a schedule where he takes 1, perhaps 2 spot starts and keeps everybody on turn, and you're not messing up his development this way. You're not cutting it short. You can say, okay, we're starting a rotation over. Here's our number 1. Where's McGreevy at with his workload? Where can we slot him in? We have an off day on the 13th. How can we use that? And it's not, it's a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle, but it makes much more sense than pulling out Steven Matz from a place that he's been really good, where they really need him to be. And all of a sudden you have a hole in your bullpen and in your rotation as you wait for him to work back up. He's not stretched out like Michael McGreevy is. He could go, 4, maybe 5 if you're lucky. So then you're still short in the bullpen either way. I just think this makes too much sense, and I would be very surprised if we do not see some version of Michael McGreevy in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But again, the club has not said anything. This is just my speculation based on the scheduling.
Yeah, and their next 13 games, to get back to what you were saying about June, their next 13 games are really tough as a block because they have, 3 against the Royals, who can pitch very, very well. The Dodgers need no introduction. 3 at home this week against the Dodgers. Toronto's not having a good year, but they have a very dangerous, potent offense. And then 4 at Milwaukee. And Milwaukee is making its move. We were all like, Milwaukee
is heating up.
Right. It was almost like we were looking at, maybe this isn't going to be the usual Brewers version of devil magic. But they're getting starting pitching back. Their bullpen, they've restructured that a little bit. They have a really good offense. that team, the Cardinals are, listen, they're now 4 games behind the Cubs after Sunday. So they've lost 3 games in recent times, but the Cubs were beating up on a lot of marshmallows. So I understand that.
Marshmallows.
But but the Cardinals are in an interesting situation because it's not just, well, first of all, they're going to tell you, we just got to take care of our business. And that's absolutely right. But they're losing ground to the Cubs and what's behind us here? Oh, Milwaukee's creeping up now, so it's going to be very, very interesting because the Cardinals have a 4-game series at Milwaukee. Then they play Cincinnati at home. And then the Cubs come in for 4.
For the first time. We have not
Right.
seen the Cubs all year. So this is big for the division.
So needless to say, and then after that, who do they have? They have the White Sox and I don't know. It levels off
White
a little bit.
Sox and Cleveland, I think,
Right.
is how they round out June.
And Cleveland's really, really good too. But anyway, this is such a cliche, but it's so true. We're going to know so much more about the Cardinals at the end of June, right?
Yep. We're going to know
exactly
exactly who they are.
We've already discovered a lot of things, a lot of good things, but now we're going to they're going to have a body of schedule that's going to be really challenging, and they're going to be really tested, and we will be making additional discoveries about them, whether those discoveries are good or bad. It's going to be a very interesting month.
And that's what I think makes June so, I mean, for all the reasons you just said, but what comes after June? Oh my gosh. What comes after June? July.
You're like Victor Scott with the Youngry.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah,
I like Youngry. Youngry is way better than whatever I just said.
Jaloon. I like that. We got
bad. What month even?
I got to work that into a column, anyway.
Oh no. So after June comes July, as we all know, and as we know in July, there is the trade deadline. And I think Mo, and specifically, has targeted the month of June as his decision time. We talked about this in April, said we still have 6 weeks or so. I think when we see this club, especially after that Cubs series, around the middle to end of June, we'll have a better indication of how the Cardinals are going to approach the trade deadline, which is so fascinating, not just for this year, now that they're maybe in contention, but what is it going to do for the future? So June, we talk about the June swoon all the time. I actually think this June will be one of the most important Junes that this team plays in a while, because it's not just this season's success on the line, it's the future. And I'm not quite sure what they're going to do. And I don't think they're sure either, but that's okay, Bernie, because they don't have to be right now.
I know we want to wrap things up, but I want to throw one question at you, because you did a lot of good reporting on this very topic that was in your piece in the Athletic Friday about Ollie Marmol's challenge in terms of distributing plate appearances. And there's, 2 levels of that, as you wrote about very, very well. There's the thing, okay, where does the runway sort of get moved to the side, where you have to just try to win? And to an extent, that's happened already with Nolan Gorman, because Alec Burleson's moved ahead of him. So, and you laid that out very nicely. But what I wanted to ask you, now we know that Jordan Walker is going to be out. And again, I take them at their word. It's not a major thing, but he still is going to be out. So what does that mean for Nolan Gorman, even though they play 2 different positions and one's a right-handed hitter and one's a left-handed hitter?
Mm-hmm.
But does this mean Nolan Gorman will get a few more whacks? What do you think?
Yes, for 2 reasons. One, because of Jordan being out, but he won't be out for very long. And I do think Ryan Vilade will get at least a couple starts in Jordan's absence. What we're going to see more Gorman is because of what we talked about with the whole 2 days off in June. The Cardinals were able to play their A team almost every single game because they had an off day every 7 days. And, players like Nolan Arenado, Wilson Contreras, Lars Nootbaar, Brendan Donovan, they're not going to ask for another one. So you could play them every single day. That's not going to be the case this month in June. They're going to have to work in a rotation of guys. So that actually creates more opportunity for Gorman. And Gorman is such a streaky hitter. I can't imagine how difficult it is for him to have such limited at-bats and come in and feel like he has to produce. When Nolan Gorman's at his best, he's on one of his fire tears. We all know what that looks like. It's insane to watch. It doesn't happen as much as we'd like it to. But it's going to be really difficult for him to catch fire in such limited opportunities. I think if there's a benefit to this absurd June scheduling, it will be that the Cardinals will have to force in a rotation. They're going to have to get guys off their feet. And they have such a versatile lineup to begin with in terms of putting different players at the DH, whether you can put Contreras, Burleson, it can go in the outfield, Donovan can play all over the diamond. There will be a way to get Nolan Gorman back in a semi-regular rotation. So that will also help. And I think that's actually a bigger play than Jordan Walker's minor IL stint.
And I think June could be the time, depending on the amount of work that he gets. If Gorman is going to put it all together, June would be the month, because I know people get tired of me saying this, and every time I write about it or talk about it on one of my videos, people are like, "Oh, you got to give it up with this Gorman stuff." Well, no, I don't actually,
We
because
don't.
the thing of it is, and I don't have the updated numbers in front of me. I ask people to trust me because I'm a numbers nerd and all that. But Nolan Gorman, the number one thing that we all put on him, rightfully so, is his plate discipline was horrendous. He has made major strides in that
Yes,
area.
he
His
has.
strikeout rate is way down. His
Down
swing
over
miss.
11%.
There you go. I mean, his
I
swing
got you.
miss. You got exactly his swing miss rate is way down. His chase rate is at a career low. I mean, these are all really positive trends. They have not translated into production, but he's developed some much better habits at the plate. So common sense tells us that if he's going to break out, given his improved plate discipline, if he gets enough at bats, the time is right that we will see some things from him. And that's my hope. I feel bad for the guy. I hope he gets cranked up, because now we got, I'm getting emails from fans. Well, you got to trade him for Pete Fairbanks, and all this other stuff.
Okay.
It's like
Okay.
everybody wants to trade him, and I understand it to an extent, but it's still a little too soon, given
It's too soon.
the dramatic improvement he's made in his plate discipline.
But we don't get to see it from a fan perspective because he's not playing so often. And I think hopefully June will be an opportunity for him to get that. So here's what I'm looking for in June. I'm
Okay.
looking for the Cardinals to assert themselves identity-wise. I'm looking to see if Nolan Gorman's going to get more opportunity. And I'm looking to see Mike McGreevy get at least one spot start. Let's see how that goes here as we sit here on 6:20 p.m. on June 1st. Let's see.
That sounds
Bernie,
good.
fun as always.
Yeah.
I know we got a big homestand coming up, so we'll be back with you at some point next week. I am going to make sure I get a margarita before my flight. But
Make it
for all of you-
a double.
Yeah, I think so. I think I deserve that.
You absolutely do.
But for all of our friends at Cardinal Territory, thanks as always for watching. You can find Bernie everywhere. Follow him on Twitter. I strongly encourage. Well, he does so many things well. The noon, we talked about this before, the noon on Tuesday segment on KMOX Gas House Gang with Ollie Marmol is some of the best inside journalism, inside interviews you're going to get in the game. Bernie, you do a fantastic job with Ollie in that spot. And Cardinals fans, I really encourage you to listen, because you're going to see a side that we see of Ollie every day. And I think it's so much easier to understand where he's coming from and his mindset on thinking things through. And he really does not shy away from any question. So if you're still unsure about where Ollie Marmol is as a manager, I'm not saying you have to like him. I'm not saying you have to think that he's a good manager. I am saying I think you probably learn some things about him if you hop on Bernie's show. That's at 12 noon to 12:30 on Tuesdays at KMOX.
And also, if you don't mind me plugging him, I write every day, and I also do a video every day at sportshubstl.com. And so I am a one-man content farm. I don't need anyone else. I sit here all day and produce whatever. So anyway, and I'm glad to be part of Cardinal Territory too. I look forward to that every single time. So,
and we're grateful for all your work, Bernie. I've been reading you since day one, and I will never stop. So hopefully the month of June brings us even more fun things to write about. May certainly set the bar pretty high. All right, Cardinal Territory fam, I'm signing off. Bernie's signing off as well. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with you next week.